Now to remove the inner timing cover gasket, it's a little loose, so I use a straight razor blade here, very gently, and I just walk my way around to try to get it to separate from the surface of the engine block. And I'll work my way all the way around and get that off. Okay, there it goes. I just slide it off, and then I'll clean up this face and get rid of all the old bits of gasket and crud that are on it. So when I put the new gasket on, it'll seal nice and tight. Now to get the hardened piece of gaskets that are stuck off, I still use the razor blade, but very shallow angle, and I just work away gently at where the gasket material is. And if I just keep shaving, I usually can get it to come loose without putting scratches in the block. So I used some 600 grit wet dry paper and then some 1000 grit wet dry paper, and cleaned up all the surface here to make sure I got rid of all the little bits of gasket. Now before I put the timing cover on, I use some engine assembly lube, and I put a bunch in the bearing to get it lubricated, and all along the chain and the sprocket teeth. So on first engine start, the timing chain's going to be well lubricated. So I'm going to remove the front crankshaft seal, and I use a large socket which will fit around the inside of the seal, and then just give it a good whack. And the seal's out. So I'm ready to put the new front crankshaft seal in, and I've heated this area with my heat gun, but I'm going to give it a little more blast, and then I should be able to just push the seal in. I probably use the heat gun for a couple of minutes just to get the aluminum to heat up and expand. And you can pretty well put it in with your fingers. You want it to be flush when you get done. There. That's just about there. I'm going to tap that just a little bit with my socket and my hammer. A little high on this side. There. Okay. It's in and flush, and that's what we want. Now before I put the timing chain gasket on, I use an alcohol wipe and clean the surface to make sure it's not got any oil or anything on it, because it's a heat sensitive gasket and I want to make sure it adheres to the aluminum block. So a little bit of dirt there, and I'll continue to wipe it down until it comes clean. The other thing I do is I wipe the sealing surface on the timing cover again to make sure it'll adhere to the gasket. And I just keep doing that with the alcohol wipes until they come off clean. So now that everything's clean, I can put the inner timing cover gasket on, and there's a little U-shaped slot that goes on the left side. So the gasket just hangs there like that. Now up here is a little circular gasket. It's just the same thickness as this. And the reason for that gasket is because these two holes at the top of the inner timing cover will fit over that. And you don't want the cover to tip when you tighten it. So these are just to be sure that there's the same amount of gasket material on all of the bolts. Now what I like to do to just keep them from going anywhere is I just put a little bit of grease on them so they'll just sort of tack in place, and then I can stick it on right up there and it'll stay there when I install the timing cover. When I install the inner timing cover, I use the CycleWorks tools. The nose fits into a circular plate that has a slot cut in it. And then I thread the pusher bolt into the crankshaft, and then that pushes against the cover to make sure it's tight. Now the other thing I did is oiled the outside of the nose bearing so it'll slide into the boss in the timing cover a little easier. So I heated the timing cover in the oven at about 200 degrees for about 25 minutes. And I put a little bit of oil on the inside of the front crankshaft seal. And now I'll just slide her on. And hopefully everything goes nice and smooth. Just got to line it up a little bit. And then, there we go. And now I'll put the pusher assembly on. And I get the nose in the groove. Make sure my bolts are all the way down. There we go. Now I can use my wrenches to just tighten this up and seat everything. Okay, so that's tight, and we'll just let it sit until it cools off. Now it's possible for the cover not to be exactly centric with the camshaft fitting. So what I do is take a 4mm bolt, and I use it as a guide, a gauge block if you will, and I check the distance from the edge of the hole to the edge of the cam coupling, just to be sure it looks to be uniform. And if it's off a little bit, I can wrap on the cover and cause it to move just a little bit until everything's right where it needs to be. And it's looking pretty good, so I think it's square. Now I take my bolt card and I start putting the bolts in, and these top two bolts are the ones that go through where the little donut gasket is. So I use my flashlight and I verify that the gasket's right there and the bolt went through the hole, and I just go around and fill them all in remembering to put the little flat washers in here, here, and here, which is where the Allen nuts go. So I don't want to forget to get those in there. Now to get the flat washers in, I find if I use a needle nose plier to just sort of position it and get it to sit, then I can grab the Allen bolt and stick the socket in it, and then just run it in, and then I don't forget any of those little washers. Now I hand tightened all the bolts and nuts, and then I torque them in 3 stages, but in inch pounds, not foot pounds. So I bring them up to 30 and then 60, and then before I go to 72 inch pounds, the final torque, I heat the boss around the nose bearing with my heat gun, and I've been doing that for a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to top it off now and then tighten it up to 72. The reason for that is just to be sure that the cover slid all the way down the nose bearing and doesn't put it in tension. Now I have the torque wrench set to 72 inch pounds, and I do it in a crosswise pattern like this. Because it's a big gasket, I want to make sure it gets brought tight uniformly so it doesn't pucker. Now I have to change out the sockets because I'm going to be using the Allen nuts now. And now I'm just going to go around and verify everybody's tight. Okay, timing cover's installed.